everyone, and welcome to Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, and along with my co-host, Chris Kaye, we discuss and dissect our favorite music, heavy metal. So sit back, relax, pop open a cold one, and let the debate begin. Welcome back for another episode of Debating Metal. I'm Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal.
And I'm Chris Kaye.
And we're your hosts for Debating Metal. Today's episode 8, is when did a band or artist lose you, and did they get you back?
Was there a band you loved that maybe changed musical direction or just did something you didn't like, and were they able to get you back later on in their career?
Sounds like a cool topic.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. What did we go over last week?
Last week's episode, we talked about bands who re-recorded their songs or albums, and we mentioned bands Kiss, Twisted Sister, Anthrax, Iron Maiden, Merciful Fate, Metallica, Deep Purple, Arch Enemy, Testament, Whitesnake, White Lion, and Pearl Jam. Whole bunch of bands we talked about last week.
Speaking of which, at the record store the other day, you picked up Testament's.
I did pick up that Testament re-recorded on First Strike, Still Deadly.
Yeah.
That was very cool. I personally like the album. I see the internet gave it 50-50 on the reviews. Some were good, some were bad. It's all what we like. So, along with that, last week we spoke about the Big Four title tracks. And if you follow us on social media, you know that I posted Chris and I's top Big Four title tracks. I posted the album covers that are associated with those title tracks. So check out that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And this week's Big Four, our topic is going to be intro songs or openers. That was a real difficult choice for us to pick. And so later on at the end of the show, we'll reveal our Big Four intro openers. This week, we're going to start off with our segment, What Should You Be Listening To? And Chris, let us know.
All right, so I'm going to start off with something new, which is Night of the Witch, Testament's new single. Very cool, very heavy. Was not expecting what they released. So,
I heard it, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to it several times over and over because it just was such a cool hook. It was so heavy. Chuck Billy's vocals were just on point. It was awesome.
I only have one criticism, which I wish that the chorus had been like doubled twice, instead of just once and out. The riff is awesome. The vocal,
very awesome.
The melody is awesome. The chorus is awesome. That's why I wish it was twice instead of just once. They do it twice at the end of the song.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it would have been even better if they had done that throughout the song. But the song is quite good without it.
Yeah, I really like it. As somebody that kind of fell off of Testament at one point and came back to them, which we'll discuss later.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really into some of the stuff they did on the last couple albums. It was cool, but it just didn't really grab me, but this did. So definitely check it out.
Cool. Will do. My choice for What Should You Be Listening To is actually twofold. Overkill released a new album a year ago, and they have, they added Jason Bittner, who's basically a musician's musician. He's an excellent drummer, and he really helped Overkill bring it to the next level in terms of recording and all that stuff. The album Wings of War is really, really good. But I go back a few albums to the White Devil Armory, and I think that album was one of their best albums in the last 10 years. White Devil Armory set up what's going on now with Overkill, and so they're going to be coming here to Houston. We're going to be seeing them pretty soon, so that should be exciting.
Yeah, I saw them a few years back. I want to say it was around 2012.
That is a few years back.
Yeah.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I haven't seen them since 1988. So that tells you how long it's been.
A few years before.
Right. So let's get on with this week's topic. When did a band or artist lose you? Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with a band I love. I've listened to since I was a kid. It's Kreator.
Okay, cool.
Kreator's a thrash band from Germany, if you're not familiar with them. Very kind of underground, I guess, in the U.S., not as big as some of the other bands because they were mostly they were mostly a European act.
Right.
And the big reason for that is if if you're coming from overseas and you don't have a huge audience to play to, it's very difficult for a lot of those bands to come over here. And they did tour a lot when they first started. It was kind of in the middle of their career that it became difficult when the 80s metal kind of dropped off the map around the time of alternative rock.
Right.
There was a while there where they just weren't getting the audience that they needed to justify a U.S. tour.
Right. If you're not a headline act, it's hard to come over here and tour even as an opening act. And if you don't have label support, which a lot of labels kind of disappeared in the late 90s, or even in the early 90s, a lot of labels were not promoting metal whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it found it difficult to kind of pick up on a tour. And so yeah, it makes it difficult, especially on the European bands.
Well, what ended up happening with them is they released one of my favorite albums was Coma of Souls. It's probably their most recognizable album to most U.S. fans.
I remember that album.
So after that was really kind of around the time that industrial music was hitting, kind of Nine Inch Nails.
Ministry.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And they released an album that was kind of a mix between death metal and industrial, which was Renewal. I wasn't a fan.
So was that sort of similar to like Fear Factory?
Yeah, kind of. It just didn't do anything for me from coming from a very strictly thrash band. It was very out of the ordinary, just came out of left field, and it didn't appeal to me.
Okay.
They did the next album, which was another industrial kind of style album, which was Cause for Conflict, which I actually liked a lot more. It's not one of my favorites, but I at that point I was like, okay, that was just a blip on the radar, no big deal.
Okay.
But then the next two albums came out, which was Outcast and Endorama. And those went from industrial to alternative metal.
Oof.
And that was just too far left field, and I just couldn't get behind it. And by the time the last one, Endorama, came out from that era, I couldn't listen to it at all.
Wow, that's a shame, because they were a really up-and-coming band in that late 80s. And 90s thing.
And I understand experimentation, and that's what bands need to do sometimes to keep going when they're bored of what they're putting out. I get that, but it's just when it's so far different than what you've come to expect from the band. Sometimes it's just hard to continue with them.
Yeah, similar to some famous bands we know in the 90s.
Well, what ended up happening though, after that album, they finally released a follow-up, which was Violent Revolution, which is my favorite Creator album.
So they brought you back.
They did, because not only did they return to their thrash roots, but they brought in melodic metal, kind of like the Gothenburg kind of sound.
Right, okay.
And so it was just everything from that point. They did Enemy of God, Hordes of Chaos, Phantom Antichrist, and the newest album, which is escaping me at the moment, but everything they've released has just been spot on
since that point.
Yeah, and it's only increased in quality. That being said, like I still the Return album was my favorite, but I think there's more to it. That there's that emotional connection to it. There's the nostalgia. That's that moment with saying, "Oh my gosh, they're back on track. This is what I expect out of them." That's maybe why I think that, but they've increased in quality in what they're putting out, because they've only gone further and further experimenting, but in the direction that I appreciate, I guess.
And that's a good thing, especially a band that's been around that long. Speaking of bands that have been around that long, one of my favorite bands has had a couple of lulls in their career.
A couple,
and I would say the second lull is not as much as not as bad as the first lull, and some people may not even think it's a lull. But basically, I was a hardcore fan for Iron Maiden from 1982 on. I mean, I got introduced to them with Number of the Beast. And ever since then, I've been a really diehard fan. But they lost me after Bruce left. They had a hard time there in the early 90s with No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark. And, when I went to see them during the Fear of the Dark tour, they were playing theaters. They weren't playing the big arenas anymore. And that was okay. I mean, I got to see him. It was funny because Testament opened up for him, and I missed Testament. Got there right as the bombs were blasting for the I forgot what the lead song was. I think it was Be Quick or Be Dead. I don't remember. Anyway, the PA went out, so they had to start. Bruce is, encouraging everybody to sing as the audience was literally guiding the band through the song because no one could hear Bruce singing. So that was strange and fun.
Strange, but kind of a cool experience.
I've had weird issues with Iron Maiden concerts, since the beginning when I saw I was around when Bruce, someone threw an M80 firecracker on stage, almost blew the sound guy's face off.
Oh wow!
The front of house guy, and Bruce got real pissed, and it was in the middle of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and he pointed someone out and had security throw him out.
That's crazy.
That was real dangerous. So something's always gone wrong between Iron Maiden and Anthrax. I always have some weird kind of issues at the concerts. But anyway, to get back to the main point.
Well, I would definitely agree with you. I mean, to me, the last album that I really loved was Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
Right.
I mean, that was, and up until later on in their career. But there was those couple albums, No Prayer for the Dying, Fear of the Dark, and then the stuff with Blaze Bayley, which just completely lost me.
Well, and that's where I was headed. See, because what I liked about No Prayer was that recording-wise, they went back to a more raw kind of sound.
Yeah.
I liked it. Other people didn't like it. The songs were a little weaker, were definitely weaker. I mean, Adrian Smith was definitely missing.
Yeah, I mean, he had, two songwriting credits on that album?
Something like that. Yeah. But basically, he was non-existent, for the most part. So he was one that was kind of accepting of all the synthesizers and the direction Iron Maiden was going. So when he left, that Steve kind of wanted to get back to basics, and he didn't want to get back to basics. So that's why he ended up leaving. They make this album basically on the fly. Steve had just set up his studio barnyard in the back of his estate, if you want to call it that. So, and it wasn't completely ready. It was, I think, a mobile studio at the time. For the next album, it worked. So they kept me going because Seventh Son and the tour was long, and then a couple of years. It took 2 years for that album or the next album, No Prayer, to come out. So No Prayer comes out, Fear of the Dark comes out, and Bruce leaves. And then there was a period of time there where they didn't do anything. They released those two
live one.
Yeah, they released a real live one and a real dead one. And I liked it because I wasn't too big on the newer songs, but that real dead one had all the classics on it. It was pretty cool, but it was just a throwaway so that they can basically kill time while they got their new singer and recorded their new album. X Factor comes out with Blaze Bayley. I just couldn't get it. I didn't like the fact that it started off with a 10-minute slow song, Sign of the Cross. It just wasn't my thing. And I never really grasped that album, and I kind of just faded away liking Iron Maiden. Then,
to stop you there, it was more than that for me, because to me that was the whole package that sold an album. I remember going to record stores when I was a kid and just picking out an album based on the cover. I mean, they didn't have headphones or anything for you to listen to these things. I mean, right. It was a small record store that they had a lot of metal. So I just had to go based on a cool picture.
Right.
And I got to say, like, seeing X Factor, there was nothing about that album that appealed to me.
If you remember a few weeks back, that was my number one
bad album
Big
cover.
4 worst album cover. Yeah. So, yeah, that album cover was terrible. So that didn't help the appeal to the album whatsoever. And then to open it, listen to it, and have the songs not be as good as what you hoped or expected, that was just a major disappointment. Then Virtual 11 comes out a few years later, and it was more of the same. Although I did kind of get excited when I heard the lead track off of that,
which is my favorite on the album.
Escapes me right now.
Future Real.
That album, when I heard that, I said, "Oh, they're writing again like the way they used to with Bruce." And I immediately thought Bruce perfectly fit that song, Future Real. But then Angel and the Gambler came on, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And it just went downhill from there. I never gave the album a chance. Listening to it recently, still not very good, but I can pick out the highlights and say, okay, I can pick 2 or 3 songs from that album. Now, obviously, The Klansman's on that album, Future Real's on that album. There's a few good songs, but overall, it's just not a strong album.
It's not a cohesive album. It's very disjointed.
Right. So they lost me for that whole entire period. Now, on top of that, okay, that period of time, I would say for me, 93 to 97, that's a 4-year, maybe even 98, 5-year period, was real difficult for me in terms of music. I wasn't no longer involved in the music industry. I wasn't working I was working for up until 96. I wasn't as involved as I was before. So I lost track of a lot of bands. Iron Maiden was one of them. I just lost it. Now, when they came back in 99 and 2000, 99, Bruce joins again. They release Ed Hunter. Bruce does the cover, or not cover, but they re-record Wrathchild, which we spoke about last week. And then they come out with A Brave New World. It's a 6-piece band. Adrian comes back. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Brave New World sucked me back in. And I'm like, yes, this is the band that I've been missing.
That was it for me too. I remember the album coming out. I remember, seeing the cover. I didn't hear Ed Hunter until way later. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't even aware that was an existing album, to be honest, even though it was a compilation. But yeah, Brave New World though, I heard the first song I heard was Wicker Man.
Wicker Man, that's just amazing.
And yes, absolutely back on track.
Right. From that point on, I was back on the Iron Maiden bandwagon. But then A Matter of Life and Death came out. Because I was with them on Dance of Death. But even then, I kind of started to fade away a little bit. They weren't touring the U.S. like they had in the past. So that was another big problem. I didn't get to see shows, and I didn't get to see Iron Maiden. They put out A Matter of Life and Death, and I just felt it wasn't that strong. Iron Maiden have completely changed their style. Not that it's for the worse. I like what they're doing. But there are some things about that style that just doesn't jive with the old Iron Maiden, and it's been taking a long time to get used to the fact that they're not the same band.
Yeah.
Even though mostly the same people, they just have a different writing style. They age, they progress, and that's fine. Then they came out with Final Frontier, another one which I didn't give a chance, but now I realize there are some pretty good songs on there. And to me, it was like Brave New World. It went down a little bit with Dance of Death. It went down to whatever lower peak they had with A Matter of Life and Death, and then they began to come back up. Final Frontier was a little bit better than Matter of Life and Death, and then the Book of Souls it jumped right back up to Dance of Death, almost right underneath Brave New World in terms of level.
See, I feel a little bit differently about it because I like A
Matter of
Life and Death.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't give, just because of what was going on in my life at the time, I didn't give Final Frontier much of a chance. But like you said, there's some pretty good songs on there. And now, going back, I've enjoyed it. But during that time,
right,
that's kind of when I dropped off.
Exactly.
And then when Book of Souls came out, I didn't even hear it probably for the first year. But there was other stuff going on in my life at the time that I just couldn't keep track of everything.
And that's where a lot of these things happen. When did a band lose you? You kind of, it also depends on what's going on with you in your life. Mm-hmm. For Iron Maiden, for me, the Final Frontier, what I liked what Maiden was doing was they were having those legacy tours along with a new tour. A legacy tour, new tour in terms of new album. So it's new album, legacy, new album, legacy. You and I recently went to see the Legacy of the Beast tour, mm-hmm, which is a legacy tour. Even that being a legacy tour, we know there's a tremendous rumor of a new album coming out. The Book of Souls tour was really awesome. I got to see that one. So there's so much in the Iron Maiden camp going on. They've got me completely wrapped up, and I'm harder core than I ever have been.
Oh, yeah. Same.
Who are we going to talk about next?
Let me talk about Megadeth. They've always been one of my favorite bands, and I think where it started dropping off for me was actually probably one of their most popular albums, which is Countdown to Extinction.
Really?
To me, it was a departure of everything that they were doing. It was more commercial, and it just didn't. The songs didn't hit me in the same way.
See, I would have figured out. I would have thought a little bit later because I have them on my list too, mm-hmm, but mine came a few years later.
Yeah,
mine came in '95 or '97 for Cryptic Writings.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was just like that. That lost me there.
Well, see, for me, it was that those first few albums were so heavy and just kind of violent. I don't know a better way to put it. They were there.
They smacked you in the face.
Yeah, and this just seemed different to me, and I liked it initially, and I still like songs on it, but it was the beginning of where I started to.
Right, especially coming off of Rust in Peace, which was such a strong album.
Yeah, it's my second favorite album from Megadeth, but it's probably their best. I mean, I like Peace Sells better, but overall, I can recognize that Rust in Peace is probably a better album.
I like Rust in Peace a lot. Now, as far as Countdown to Extinction is concerned, again, and you and I have talked about this before, to me, it was a pattern that they were following because Dave was always what he would consider in Metallica's coattails. So Metallica in 1991 for the Black Album went commercial. Since Rust in Peace came out in 1990, that was behind. So the next album that Megadeth did, seeing the success that Metallica had with going commercial, they went a little bit commercial.
Less so.
Right, with Countdown. And they progressively got more and more commercial as time went on. Because I thought the same thing with Euthanasia.
I didn't like Euthanasia.
But I like the two lead songs off it. I like Train to Consequences. I like A Tout Le Monde. But it was definitely a weaker album. And then Cryptic Writings, and it was just like, wow. It just went way
Cryptic
downhill.
Writings, I enjoyed. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed. Risk, I didn't even give Risk a chance. There's a couple songs on Risk. Yeah, but there's still a couple songs on Risk that are not bad. It wasn't until A World Needs a Hero, and I remember watching the commercial during wrestling. They had a commercial that was advertising the album coming out, and I remember they played one of the songs on the commercial, and it just really captured my attention. And I wish I could remember what it was now, but
Moto Psycho probably.
It probably was, but
because that was the big single off of that album.
Yeah, and I just remember going out and getting the album as soon as it came out because I was so excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of upheaval with Megadeth at that point too.
Yeah, Dave Ellefson wasn't in the band anymore at that point.
Right, Dave Ellefson wasn't in the band. They had changed record companies after being on Capitol for so long. So the late 90s, from 95 on, did not or was not kind to Megadeth. The one song that they did have in there that I didn't even know about, I had no clue, Kill the King, which is probably one of my favorite Megadeth songs.
Yeah, it's an
Came
awesome
out,
song.
I think, in 98 or somewhere on one of their greatest hits albums. That song was incredible. So that kind of steered them back towards, what came out on A World Needs a Hero.
Yeah.
But, in between that, from Countdown all the way down, and Countdown to me is a really, really strong album. I love
it just didn't
that
appeal
album.
to me.
Right, I get it. But both you and I had the same feeling. Megadeth lost it somewhere along the way, and they picked it up with The World Needs a Hero. So,
yeah, they just didn't have the same edge. For me, it's always been about, kind of the emotion that's put behind the music, and there's still emotion, and I could still feel it with it, but it just wasn't what I was attracted to at the time.
Right, and that being said, with Megadeth, A World Needs a Hero comes out, they get strong again, and they go through a period where they're, I guess, for whatever you can say, they were strong. Then they kind of have some up and down albums along the way until last year. Oh, not last year. It was like 2 years ago now. Dystopia came out.
Yeah, I pretty much enjoyed everything that they did after A World Needs a Hero. I liked the stuff that they did with Chris Broderick and what was
the Grover brothers. Drover. The Drover brothers, Sean and God, I can't even remember his name. John Drover, and was it Greg?
It's escaping me.
I know. It's the Drover brothers.
Well, regardless, I liked those albums. They're United Abominations is actually one I really enjoy. It doesn't have David Ellefson on it, but it's a really strong album. It's just kind of overlooked.
It is, and they had. Was it 13? That was a strong album.
13 was good,
but
I didn't like Super Collider. That much.
They tried to go commercial again.
A little bit.
And it was like, come on, what are you doing? That's not you. And even the band knew it. Yeah. There was something wrong, and everybody kind of guessed it. And then all of a sudden, with Dystopia, it was just like, it was almost like Dystopia is almost an extension of Rust in Peace.
Yeah, they brought on Kiko Loureiro from Angra,
right?
And it's such a heavy album, so good. The lyrics are better. That was the biggest gripe I had about Super Collider was the lyrics to me just were
childish. Almost.
Yeah.
They weren't as mature. So Megadeth comes back to us in about the same time, 2000. I think it was a time that the world needs a hero. So what other band are we talking about? You mentioned Testament earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about them with Testament. Testament, for me, I got into them with the New Order, and that album came out. I wasn't really big into the Legacy album. I hadn't heard. I had seen the video for Over the Wall, but I never really got into the Legacy. But when I saw the video for Trial by Fire that came off of the New Order, that hooked me. That brought me in. And I became a big fan. Practice What You Preach, Souls of Black. After that, that's when they started having personnel issues.
And with the Ritual.
And with the Ritual, right after that, Alex Skolnick left. And so there was some upheaval there. I'm not sure if Louis Clementi left at that point too or not, the drummer, but I think he did. I'm not sure exactly.
At the same time.
Because he was in and out for a bit. And they released a live album, I think it was live in London, and then they released Low with a new drummer. I think that was John Tempesta, and a new guitar player. I can't even remember the guitar player's name because I don't think it was important. Low was basically a low point for them. They were basically the last album that they had on Atlantic Records, and it went nowhere. There was no promotion behind it, and Testament kind of fell off the face of the earth for 3 years. I mean, they struggled for the next 3 years. I mean, dropped by the label. They finally decided to come back with Demonic in 1997. I could not get on that bandwagon. They tried to become a death metal band. Then that wasn't Testament. They lost me with Low, and they stayed lost until the formation of Damnation, which was not too many years ago. I think was it probably 6 years ago, I think. Something like that. That album brought me back. And then it was Dark Roots of the Earth. That album totally brought me back. I love that album. The first 4 songs, Rise Up, Native Blood, Dark Roots of the Earth, and All American Hate. Those 4 songs are awesome. Then they did a Power Slave cover. I think the band is stronger than it's ever been. They have
Half of Death.
Yeah, they have half of Death. Yeah, they have Steve
DiGiorgio.
I was going to say
Gene Hogan.
I was going to say his name wrong again. I'm glad you cut me off. So they have Steve and they have Hoagland, and the band is tighter than ever. I mean,
yeah, it's a little more technical. I think it pushes Alex Skolnick a bit, which is good.
And he wants that.
Yeah, he's very talented, but if you're not surrounded by musicians that are pushing you to do greater things, then it's not going to get better.
Right.
And I think they're definitely a tighter band. My experience with them is a little different because I'm younger, and I didn't listen to them when they first came out because I wasn't alive. But I always picked up albums in order. And that's always the way I've liked to listen to them.
Okay.
And when I was younger, I had more time to do that than now. Now I kind of go through it quickly. But I would latch onto one album and I would listen to it until, I felt like I was ready to go to the next one. And that's what I did with Testament. I started off with the first albums and kept going. But the first one that I heard was The Ritual. And that was because my friend had it. That was my idea of what Testament was. And I went back and listened, and I progressed back up to The Ritual. Okay. So then I heard Low, and I had no interest. It just didn't.
It wasn't a good album.
Yeah, it didn't do anything for me.
I mean, the song "Low" is really good, and I think that's the highlight of the Low album.
Yeah. The stuff after that, just like you said, it just didn't really. I like death metal, and it didn't really do anything for me.
It didn't come across as genuine. That was part of the issue.
It was kind of forced.
I mean, a lot of people like Demonic. A lot of people think that they got back to what they are now with The Gathering.
It's closer than to what they are now,
right? But it still was not that strong. It just that period there, late '90s. Just was not kind for Testament whatsoever.
Yeah, I went to see them during the tour, the Dark Roots of the Earth tour.
Okay,
I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite, and it got better with Brotherhood of the Snake to me, and that was where they really kind of had me back.
You and I were probably in the same room during that. Oh no, you saw them the year before I did. I saw them on the second leg of that tour.
Okay,
because we talked about that recently, and I remember you talking about that show, and I wasn't at that location because that was at the House of Blues.
It wasn't a great show. I mean, technically it was a good show, but there were some audio issues going on with the wireless mics, and it wasn't my favorite live performance. There was a lot of issues going on that just kind of took away from the show.
That's a disappointment. Okay, so we're going to come up to our next band, and this band is one of those bands I've been through thick and thin with. And I think, much like Eddie Trunk, not that I'm done with them, but it's just they're there and they exist. And I'm talking about Kiss. And Kiss, I've been a fan of Kiss since 1978 or 77. We've talked about this before. They were what got me into this metal thing we listened to.
Oh, that thing.
That thing, yeah. And Kiss, I went through the disco period with them. I went through the Elder period with them. And I did not back down. I liked the Elder. I still like the Elder. It's not a hard rock album. It's got elements. But it's a terribly weak album that has a few highlights. You have to look past that. I liked Dynasty. I liked Unmasked. I was a huge defender of Kiss during that period. They came back strong with Creatures of the Night. So for me, they didn't lose me. They didn't lose me at all. So Creatures of the Night. Then came Lick It Up, Animalize, Asylum. I was with them all the way through the non-makeup years. Revenge. I loved Revenge. I thought that was what you call a return to form. I love that album. I got to see them. I had third row, went nearly deaf at their show. Third row in front of the PA. That was pretty right there in front of me. But they lost me after the reunion. I mean, I got to see them twice.
With the Psycho Circus reunion.
So it was, the reunion happened after Unplugged. I was really big with the conventions that we spoke about on the previous episode. The company I worked for, Specs Music, in Florida, was the Florida sponsor for their music, or the official distributor for their music during the Kiss conventions while in Florida. I think they had 2 or 3 Florida shows. So I was there. So I got invited to basically work the show since I was a store manager. I got to meet Kiss. It was great. Got to spend the whole day. So instead of spending $100 to get into the show, I got in for free. After that, they had the Unplugged on MTV. They reunited because they brought back Peter, Chris, and Ace for the Unplugged show. I saw the I saw the reunion tour, which was awesome. Getting to hear some of the old songs, getting them see them back in makeup again. Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, the original guys on stage. It was a Kiss fan's dream. And then came Psycho Circus, and it was like, this is not a Kiss fan's dream whatsoever. It was a disaster.
Everything I know about it was a nightmare from beginning to end.
So, and I got to see them on that tour, which was supposed to be the farewell tour. I mean, I was in a suite. It's not even a suite. It was a suite booth area at this outdoor amphitheater, and Paul Stanley's stage where he flies across the audience during Love Gun was, one leg was in my booth that I was in. So I could have reached out and touched his boot if I wanted to, but I had to be nice.
Should have stolen his boot.
I couldn't steal it, but if I were broken the heel, then what happens? So at that point, between a really bad album, Kiss not really feeling it, and basically saying, we give up, we're done with this farewell, they just kind of, they fell off the radar. Even though they put out, I like Sonic Boom. I didn't like Monster as much, but Sonic Boom I thought was a good album. They really didn't release new music. I mean, they released Carnival of Souls as something that the fans demanded, because I heard bootlegs of it, and they did Psycho Circus, but the fans.
So they recorded it before.
Oh yeah.
But then they released it after.
Yeah, that was recorded, I believe, in 1994.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was before the convention tour that they did. They had already put that in the can and shelved it to some degree. I think they were preparing to get it released after the convention tour, and they reunited with Peter and Ace. They basically canned it. They shelved it, and they said no. Bootlegs were circulating through some of the independent conventions that they were having, and the fan shows. And then all of a sudden, they reunited. They put out Psycho Circus. Fans were like, what happened to Carnival of Souls? Because they had heard about it.
Kiss fans are rabid. They know it exists. They want it.
Yeah, exactly. And and what it was much heavier. And at that time, they were kind of going a little grunge. I mean, the album's produced by Dave Jordan, who's the same guy who did, oh no, not Dave Jordan. I think it was Toby Wright, who's the one who did Dirt for Alice in Chains. Yeah. Yep. So there, they were heavy, and then they just literally tanked it. And they said, no, we're going to just put it out. And they tried to do Psycho Circus, which, to their credit, they still play Psycho Circus today, the song, which I don't get because it's not that strong of a song. They were literally opening the tour with that. I'm like, I didn't feel it.
Well, I think they had to some degree because they were pushing this new reunion so hard. There were toys, there were all kinds of new merchandise they were putting out there. They were back in the makeup, and that was that was part of it. Like, go all in on this product that they're putting out.
I mean, they went all in, but it was, they played a few songs off of it because I think they played Into the Void live. I think they were trying to give everybody a spotlight. They gave Peter a spotlight. But in the end, all the reasons, or part of the reasons that they left to begin with, Peter and Ace, surfaced again, and they ended up leaving.
Much like the Dio reunion of Black Sabbath. It just,
right, all
the stuff that came out before just came up again.
Exactly. So Kiss, being the professionals that they are, said, you know what, we're going to keep going. They brought in Eric Singer, who was the drummer for Carnival of Souls and Revenge, who replaced Eric Carr. They brought him in, and then they had Tommy Thayer basically as part of the camp. I guess he was part of the company. The Kiss Corporation, Tommy Thayer was one of the main people behind the scenes. He's the one who put the Kiss conventions together. I got to meet him that day, so it was pretty cool to see that this guy was a fan. A guitar player for Black and Blue, was a Kiss fan. He was working for the Kiss machine. And then
that's the ultimate dream, right?
Oh yeah, and then he put together all of the Kiss box sets that came out, the videos. Now he's in the band. He replaces Ace Frehley, and Ace Frehley comes back, and then he replaces Ace Frehley again, and then just finally they said, you know what, we're done. So they put him in the makeup, and they never left. Which, you know what, quite honestly, I don't see the appeal as to why they continue to do the makeup. I really don't think they need to, but they believe that's what they are. More power to them. They lost me after Psycho Circus. Although I listened to Sonic Boom, I've listened to Monster, I like some of the songs, but it's not the same kind of emphasis or rabidness that I used to be back in the day.
Your perspective just changed.
Right. Unlike Metallica, which has never really gone down for me, Kiss kind of just went, somewhere else. I'm kind of there with Eddie Trunk about, should they or should they not have those guys in makeup? I don't know. I don't really care in the end, but because they are not doing anything new anymore, it's kind of like, whatever it is, it is.
They've become a nostalgia act.
Oh, for sure. They're definitely a nostalgia act because they're not even playing anything off the new albums. What do you got?
I wanted to talk about Arch Enemy. So the album from 2014, which is called War Eternal. Honestly, in 2014, that was my favorite album. Okay. I was so into it. It was so good, well written, lyrically driven, but also just amazing.
Is that with the new singer or the late?
That's with the new
singer,
Alyssa Whiteglues.
Okay.
Then there was a little bit of controversy afterward. There was a photographer that went to one of the shows. He was a pretty regular guy and a fan of the band, but a professional photographer named Jay Salmeron. Mm-hmm. He had taken some great shots of one of the shows he went to, and then he sees one of his photos that he had posted online with his watermark on it, and the singer Alyssa Whiteglues had taken that image and posted it along with some info about the band herself, and so he contacted their representatives and said, hey, this is my image. The standard procedure with that kind of thing is if you're the photographer, they pay you for that.
Right.
She felt like because it was a photo of her, then she owned it, which is not how it works.
No, it does not work. I'm a photographer, and I know that doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you can take a photograph of anything in the world, and that's your photograph. Mm-hmm. If there's certain rules, like say you're at a concert and you say you don't want photographers there, then that's your right to say, but they never said that.
Right.
So the argument became such a heated debate, and honestly, the band lost a lot of fans because of it. It was because they don't own that material.
No, you don't.
And so it was such an ordeal that it really I lost respect for them.
Right.
The rest of the band either had no comment or defended her. And the argument that many fans had was, oh, well, I found this on YouTube, so I guess it's mine,
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line because, there's so many things that are out there. And once it gets printed once, or not even printed, but it gets copied once into somebody's website, and it goes on to another website, and all of a sudden the person 4 or 5 websites down is just picking images off of Google, and he goes, oh, I like this one, without needing or wanting to get the rights for it, because he's basically saying, I'm just putting it on here, and boom, everyone else has it. But that's not how it works, especially if there's a guy's watermark on it. Mm-hmm. If a guy has a watermark on it, you need to ask him. And most of the time, if it's something which is not, it's not going to be something that generates money, they say, yeah, sure, go ahead and use it, but at least get permission. You can say
permission was not asked,
right?
And the thing is, let's just say this: that most guys out there, they're not going to just aggressively say, you owe me money. It's, hey, this is mine. Can you either take it down or pay me for it? I did the work. This is my property. I'd appreciate you taking it down. But just such a hard-nosed approach to it, and really just disregarding the law, is what bothered me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I have a hard time. And the guy was very nice about it. He posted all the information. You can find it easily online. All the information, the letters or the emails that went back and forth, and they're unaltered. They're there for anybody to see. And it's kind of really taken away from my ability to just really enjoy listening to the band.
Yeah, it's hard for you to separate your disdain for that particular incident from the band now.
Yeah, as an artist myself, it's really a topic that hits me hard, because I've seen so many people take images online and just say, this is mine. Just no, it's not that way. If somebody puts in the hard work, puts in the time, puts in and it's not just a monetary thing. This is something they created, and you're taking that. And I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, even myself, with my Kenneth Dean Photography Instagram page, I've had people like my images and then send me a direct message, hey, can I use this, or can I repost this? And you're reposting it on Instagram, so
but they're handling that the right way.
Right, exactly. And so, they're asking for permission. Can I repost this? Yeah, you're not getting anything money-wise out of it, but you're getting exposure. I mean, I've had a few, a couple of magazines ask me for some pictures that I've posted on Instagram, as far as reposting it on their page. And I've agreed to it, as long as they give me credit. And every single time they've given me credit, and that's fine. Did it get me exposure? It got me a few new fans. Okay, great. But if it comes to something where you're like you said, they're using it in a promotional way, there's got to be some sort of financial. I don't even want to use reward, just a financial commitment to say, yeah, we're going to buy this from you, give you a couple $100 and thank you very much. I mean, and it doesn't take a lot. I mean, you probably tell the guy, it's, he'll probably say 50, 100, 150, but whatever it is, is the band going to make $1 bajillion off of it? No, but still it's about the principle of it. And
everything. As artists themselves, they should be recognizing,
because they don't want their music stolen.
Exactly.
And they're going to probably fight those types of people who are stealing their music, even though everyone steals music nowadays. They should know, because they're on the receiving end of that.
They're having to fight that battle themselves.
Right. So that's it's.
I mean, it didn't help their cause that I didn't really enjoy their newest album, Will the Power, anyway.
So they haven't gotten you back yet?
No, not at all. Yeah. And it's too bad, because I've been a fan of them for a very long time. And I really honestly just have a hard time justifying an artist stealing from another artist.
I totally understand that. So that leads me to something I wanted to talk about. It's still all part of this topic. This is not about the band losing anybody in a way, but I think part of the reason why bands lose fans is because they take too long in between albums to create the album, whatever the process may be. So for instance, let's pick AC/DC. Okay. 1990, I think it was, they come out with The Razor's Edge. It's not until 1995, I think, that they come out with Ball Breaker. That's a 5-year period. So many things happen. The focus of people just goes away. I mean, AC/DC is no longer, they haven't been around for 5 years. And at that time of the music world, everything went from metal to grunge. And then alternate, it wasn't even grunge. I mean, it was alternative metal, alternative rock really took off. And AC/DC, you talk about dinosaur bands, they were already considered a dinosaur band. They come back with a hit on the Last Action Hero. So it's 5 years later. Then after Ballbreaker, it's not for another 4 years, I think, that they come out with their next album. And so they literally been doing a 4 or 5, almost 6 year wait in between records. Those kinds of things, back when you think about what they did in the 70s, you know, they popped out 2 albums in 76, album in 75, an album in 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 81 then went to 83.
Yeah, it was pretty
You know,
much
every year. Kiss was doing, you know, for the first 5 years of their life, they were doing 2 albums a year.
Iron Maiden put one out every
One
year.
album every year until Powerslave. Okay, bands, especially metal bands, were putting out albums every single year. It was album tour, album tour. The process is still that way today. Now it's album takes, you know, anywhere from 6 months to a year to make. Tour takes anywhere. I mean, a tour takes anywhere from a year to 2 years to complete. And in most cases, like for instance, Queensryche for a while now, when they got with Todd La Torre, they were doing album tour, album tour, album tour, but it was every 2 years. So they would, you know, and they were taking a few to 6 months to make an album, and then they would tour for a year and a half. This latest tour has actually been going on for almost 2.5 years now, and there's no end in sight as far as when they're going to get to the new album. Metallica, they're notoriously bad for this now all of a sudden.
That's one I wanted to definitely bring up because they did lose me a long time ago with the hiatus that they took up until Saint Anger.
Mm-hmm.
And Saint Anger was such a disappointment to me. It was almost unrecoverable in my eyes because it was so bad in my eyes,
right,
for what I expected out of them. I had heard from multiple people, and it may have been just word of mouth, but there was such an expectation. This was a return to form from what they were doing before the Load and Reload, and it just wasn't, and it wasn't good, and there was so little on it that I could enjoy that at that point I had written off Metallica entirely.
Yeah, that was definitely a tough period of time. From going with S&M in 1999, and then in 2001 with the Napster lawsuit.
Oh yeah, I had even stuck with them through the Napster.
You got
thing.
Napster. You've got and then with Napster that was the Mission Impossible song.
The MI2
I
song.
Disappear.
I Disappear.
You know, so you have the S&M shows with the orchestra. Then they go into the new millennium. Mind you, they had a tour. It was the Millennium Tour. Excellent tour. They were still hotter than ever. You know, still selling out stadiums.
Oh yeah.
You know, it come to 2001, they had this issue with I Disappear because the song hadn't come out yet, and all of a sudden it's on all over the radio.
Yeah.
You know, and on the internet. So they have the Napster problem, and then they're going to make a new album, and Jason leaves. It's like, whoa. Jason leaves. James goes into rehab, and you know, in 2003 they come out with this album that is, I'm a huge Metallica fan. It's hard for me to say negative things about them, but I understand where people come from when they say this album lost them. I get it. It's not a strong album. If you're gonna go through the entire catalog, it's their weakest album. But between Reload and that one, Reload has really good highlights. They've got,
but overall,
there's
it's
14.
not a great album.
Yeah, there's 14 songs on them, and 3 of them are good.
If you took all the hits from, and I mean I don't mean hits, but like if you took the strong highlights from Load and Reload and put them on one album,
that would have been
got rid
amazing.
of all the crap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those 2 albums. I mean, that one album would be amazing.
Exactly. So you know, you come to Saint Anger. Saint Anger, the song itself, as a put it in a demo format, is probably really good. Frantic is probably really good in a demo format. But then to do what they did to it, you know, with digitizing it and basically just cutting and pasting each portion of the song along the way.
Yeah, just
and then the collaborative songwriting, or not even songwriting, the collaborative lyric writing. just to see that in the movie was kind of like, whoa, that's just kind of weird. You know,
Yeah.
you're kind of stepping on James's toes here. But they came up with some good words. But in the end, the songs overall were not strong. And they were, to me, it almost looked like just watching the movie, they were just trying to put songs out to get something out so that they could then figure out what they were going to do as far as a tour.
It's
I'm
just
with
kind
you.
of crazy to me. I mean, you have a band that was like one of the toughest, meanest bands that was playing, and they had an attitude. I remember seeing Rat talk to them. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're all in the metal scene together," and the Metallica guys were just like, "We're not even in the same universe." and so
They're
you
not.
have these guys, and they have this aura about them that they're the guys, and that's it. Like, love them or leave them. And then they put out Saint Anger, they put out the movie, and the movie just does not show them in a positive light. It's just very like watching Dr. Phil.
It was. But
and-
I stepped back from that so that I can say, this isn't Metallica. Let's think about four guys. And that's why I was able to absorb it a little bit better, because I wasn't watching Metallica. I was watching four guys that have a life.
And that's different because you're older than me too.
Right.
So
Like I said.
for me in high school,
Right.
seeing a bunch of guys crying, it just didn't really,
Right.
it didn't project the right image. And I don't think they're happy with the product that got put out either.
I think overall they were not happy with it at first. I think
Maybe now
they've
you know,
accepted it now because you know what, it is something that had to happen in their eyes.
Yeah, but not every band goes through that. Like, just we have to stay together. Let's work out these problems. They move on and do different things, and it's not always a positive outcome. And luckily, Death Magnetic was very good. What ended up happening was a lot of fans got lost in the mix.
A lot of fans.
And it just wasn't something that needed to be so public for most fans.
Right, and I completely understand that from your point of view, because I can say, yeah, they lost fans. They lost fans with Napster because the guys on Talking Maiden, Josh sits there and says, after Napster, I never listened to Metallica again, and it's only been recently that Nesbitt got him back into listening to it.
I didn't have a problem with Napster. I totally understood where they were coming from. Just like I said with the whole thing with the photography issue, I completely understood. But when I was in high school, there was a Napster Bad, and I don't know if you remember these
remember that.
animations, but that really made Metallica look stupid. And I stuck with them through that. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this awesome new album that was going to come out. And I remember even seeing the album cover, and I was like, cool, that's a Pusshead cover. It's really cool looking. And I put it in the CD player, and I'm driving home, and I'm just like, what is this?
And it's funny because the reviews of that album, they talk about, Metallica's using blast beats. And Metallica's got, they've got this sound.
Blast beats on a trash can.
I don't even know. I mean, I don't even put what they put on as on the song "Saint Anger" as blast beats, because that's not blast beats. They did double bass, but he didn't do blast beats.
No.
Whatever it was, I mean, the trash can sound. They were trying to make it sound like they were in a garage. A garage doesn't sound like that. Go back to garage days. You know what? That's what a garage sounds like. It just sounds thin, but it doesn't necessarily sound like a
set it up like they had their old garage with the mattresses on the walls, and just recorded a real, honest, true garage days. Yeah.
Right. And for me, again, stepping back and understanding where other fans are coming from when they lost Metallica. Metallica didn't lose me. For me, it was kind of like I was just disappointed. Mm-hmm. And they didn't lose me because I went to see them on the 2003 Sanitarium tour with Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park. They were, to me,
that
they were
to
back.
me is like the biggest nightmare.
Well, it was weird. So you're talking about, you got the Deftones, Mudvayne, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and then Metallica.
And that to me just shows the sorry state of affairs for Metallica at that point. that whole crew.
Because that was part of, and then that's part of the reason why Orion didn't work. Mm-hmm. Okay, or if they would have done what Ozzy did with Ozfest, not necessarily pay the bands or have the bands pay them, but bring out metal bands. Mm-hmm. If they would have brought up, instead of what was it, Cage the Elephant or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, you're putting yourself with a bunch of alternative
They put
bands.
Modest Mouse on the bill. I mean, I get that they like those bands, but you got to understand, your crowd doesn't like that. You have to know your crowd.
Yeah, you're labeling yourself alternative by accident.
Right.
I mean, you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of alternative bands.
And those people, the musicians like Metallica. Some of the fans like Metallica, but the Metallica fans that are your hardcore group don't like those bands.
Yeah, like would you want to go see Napalm Death and Elton John together? I mean,
I wouldn't want to see either one of those two. I mean, I don't like
just
Napalm
saying,
Death and I don't like Elton
You're
John.
a fan of one. Do you want to go see the other?
No.
Not likely. I mean, it may be. It would be kind of an interesting show. But,
Right. But
you know, Elton John comes out and sings the last song with Napalm Death.
I mean, look, for what it's worth, it's something similar to that, okay? The Queen tribute that happened in 92, okay? We have all these bands across the universe. Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses was there. Obviously, Queen was there. Metallica was there. And yet there was all these other, Elton John was there. George Michael.
But you're talking about paying tribute to one specific band.
Right, you're paying tribute to them. But what I'm saying is that there's this eclecticness that people are there to see, not necessarily one particular band. They're there to see everybody, or they're there to see just one artist. I mean, it all depends on what the person wants.
Yeah.
But they're there to listen to Queen. Okay, that's the big difference. You know, if you go to a Metallica festival, you're
expecting Metallica-esque band.
Right, you're exactly.
Yeah.
You're expecting the same Ozfest. You go to Ozfest, you're not expecting to hear Post Malone.
No.
Okay. Or Travis Scott. You don't want
Didn't
that.
get me started on the album.
you're that's not what you want. You want what you saw. I mean, even then, Wicked Wisdom in one of the shows was Jada Pinkett Smith's metal band. That was legit metal.
But this is a metal band.
Right.
Yeah.
But Ozzy himself is not a metalcore guy, but he brought metalcore bands. And he basically
But they're still within the realm of what you're expecting.
Right, exactly. You know, and even then, the bands would get later. Like, for instance, you have all these metalcore bands, but Rob Zombie's headlining the second stage. Okay? You have all these metalcore bands, but Black Label Society's headlining the second stage at some point. You know, Slipknot got premiered on that tour. Those things are what you expect. I wasn't going to go there and say, oh, yeah, I want to listen to Modest Mouse open up for Black Sabbath. What the hell?
Yeah.
So that's why Orion didn't work. That's why Metallica lost more fans. They may have gained different fans with their albums, but they did not gain new fans or keep old fans. It's like one of these things. It was almost like a wash. You didn't do anything to help yourself.
Yeah.
And so they have this losing proposition that should not have been a losing proposition. They have way too many fans in general for something like that to be a losing proposition. If they would have brought out a whole host of up-and-coming metal bands like they were back in 1982, that would have succeeded. That would have blown the doors off of Ozfest. I mean, Slipknot does it with Knotfest.
Yep.
I mean, come on. It's not that hard of a concept. If you're going to put together a festival, 2 nights or 3 nights, whatever it is, you need to bring out what is going to pay your bills, what your bread and butter is. Don't bring out Modest Mouse. You know, Kaye's Yellowfin. I don't even know who else was on there, but none of them were metal bands.
Yeah, I mean, when it boils down to it, these guys, they don't owe us anything. You know, they're just putting a product out, and if you like it, you like it.
Right.
But it just whenever I heard Saint Anger, my love for the band was never the same. I liked Death Magnetic, but it didn't bring anything back for me. The newest album, Hardwired, it's a lot better. I really enjoy Hardwired, but still, I haven't reached that same feeling about Metallica that I ever had before.
Right. And for me, being a diehard fan of Metallica, Saint Anger was a disappointment. Death Magnetic was definitely a return to form, if you want to look at it that way. Close to. I mean, I guess you could say it's the next step in the evolution after the Black Album, or even maybe in between and Justice for All and the Black Album, because there's some stuff that's harder on Death Magnetic. And then from Death Magnetic, you go to Hardwired. Hardwired is across the board a really good, strong album, but it has a lot of ups and downs as far as, you know, the peaks and valleys. There's a lot of strong songs. There's not too many. To me, the weakest song on the album is Murder One, which is the song that's a tribute to Lemmy. That I could have dealt without. I put in Lords of Summer in its place, and it would have been a really good album. It's still a really good album.
I think
We've
it's
been
too
that much
long, to be honest.
I mean, and that's the other problem. They just keep writing longer and longer. I mean, they're like Iron Maiden. They just keep writing longer and longer songs. It's like, dude, just come on.
I don't mind the longer songs. Just keep the album to a reasonable length. Don't keep going. If I'm driving to work, I listen to an album on the way to work. I expect something 50 minutes or less. Not,
but look at Iron Maiden
5.5 hours.
Was 90 minutes.
Same thing. It's hard to get to those songs at the end sometimes.
Right. I mean, Metallica's was kind of weird because theirs was 85 minutes or something like that. It wasn't really. It was just past enough to put everything on one CD. So they split it almost like two albums. It was 12 songs, 6 and 6. And it literally almost treats itself like two albums, but they decided to put it all on one album. It's not a bad album, but what happens is as a fan, you can choose to accept or not accept what they're doing now. So if you want to stay a fan of Metallica, you can't just sit there and say, I'm going to live off the first 4 albums. Because
you absolutely can.
No, well, you can, but you're not. But you're not going to go to a concert and expect them to play just the first 4 albums. So what I'm getting by that is like you can't. A person could live in the first 4 albums, and that's all they want to do, but that's not a fan. With Metallica, the band has changed. Lars said the other day, Master of Puppets sounds too tight. It should be a little bit looser the way we play now. They have a completely different style of recording, completely different style of playing. You're either on board with it or you're not.
That's the same for any band.
True. I mean, every musician, every artist, and so like that. But as a fan, do you accept it or you don't accept it? You can or cannot. Most of the fans have accepted that. I have accepted it. Metallica is a conversation for another time at this point. We've got other stuff to attend to. Is there any other band you want to mention?
I mean, I wanted to mention In Flames.
Okay.
They were a big influence on me. I mean, I was a huge fan. They were really the guys that pushed the Gothenburg sound. At the Gates existed before them. They were the originators, I think. But In Flames was one of those bands that really brought that around, that made it popular. They literally changed their style with an album called Reroute to Remain. I mean, that you couldn't say we're changing more clearly.
So was that album title designed to indicate to the fans that
basically,
that's what they were doing?
We're changing things up.
Reroute to Remain.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're changing their style to remain relevant. Was that the idea?
I mean, that's the way it reads to me.
Okay.
They had put out Clayman, which was probably the most mature album. There's a mixture of fans. There's fans that say that Clayman's kind of like their Black album,
okay.
where it's different enough from what they were doing before, but it still was a natural progression of where they were getting.
Okay.
But there are fans that say Clayman was the last good album, and there's fans that say the prior album, Colony, was the last good album. I'm of the belief, I love Clayman. I think it was a great album. When they hit Reroute to Remain, I was kind of sitting there scratching my head. What did they do? Mm-hmm. It's so different than what they were putting out before. It became like an alternative metal from being a death metal band. So they were kind of death / alternative because of the vocals. The playing style just completely changed. No more solos. It was all kind of industrial mixture of electronic guitars. Just so different. And I kind of like the next album that came out after that, which was a Soundtrack to Your Escape. It had some cool elements. It was more clean album. The previous album was kind of muddy, and this was more clean. But
how were the songs in comparison? Were they in the same vein as the Reroute?
It kind of went back a little bit, but not. It seemed more like it almost. If you listen to them, you'd say these are in reverse order. This progression makes more sense in reverse order.
Right.
By the time, the next couple of albums, they completely lost me. It was just alternative metal. They lost all the solos, the very intricate, not symphonic, but melodic metal. Mm-hmm. They lost all of that, and it just never got my attention back. Yeah, I mean, they released a set of singles, like a EP that had Depeche Mode covers, and they'd always kind of done that. But when they did their first Depeche Mode cover, which was Everything Counts, it was a metal version. This was a Depeche Mode song. And it just, it's disheartening because I was such a diehard fan. They're not even the same band. There's not even the same members. The only person left.
You mentioned
Yeah.
that.
Well, there's two people left from what would be the classic lineup. The drummer is now the guitarist and songwriter, and the singer sings in a completely different style. So that's a hard one for me.
I'm trying to think of a band who has done like a 180 like that, and I can't think of anything. The only one that while you were talking about this that I was thinking of, and I read about them, I don't know anything about them, but I read this the other day. Amorphous was doing a anniversary tour for their, I guess, their first major album or first big album that they had. The album was supposed to be death metal, and it sounds like that. You know, it has the growling vocals, but it has there's a melodicness to it. Unlike the Gothenburg and the Swedish death metal and all that stuff, this one is like totally like almost like a Morbid Angel type of vocals, and very, very heavy and dark, but yet there was a hook to it. But the band changed, and they actually have clean vocals now and hooks and all that stuff. And so I'm trying to think of a band that would kind of do like a 180. It's like asking, like thinking, you know, like David Vincent. You know, he's like doing country music now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like that's a big flip.
Well, that was one thing that put a lot of people off about Steven Tyler was his
country album.
Yeah, country album.
But that's late in their career now.
No, understood, but
right.
it's same effect. It was like, what are you doing?
So as far as In Flames is concerned, I mean, are you still listening to them now?
Every album that comes out, I always give one listen.
You give it a chance to see.
Yeah, because it was such a big deal to me.
Right.
And it's not like I can't find something to enjoy, but it just doesn't grab me.
Which is the one that has the bird on the cover?
That was Sounds of a Playground Fading.
Okay. When I was working in the record store, that was probably the most popular one I kept seeing over and over and over again. That was
from a couple of years ago. That was from like 2010-ish.
There was this one that I'm thinking about was in stores around 2004.
2004 would have been.
It's like to me,
the soundtrack to Your Escape. It has a circle, like a gold circle on the cover.
This to me, for some reason, has like blood dripping down.
Oh, that was Come Clarity. It had like a there was a guy on the cover like clutching his heart.
I don't remember.
It was white.
I was just asking because I just wanted to know if that was one of the albums that you liked.
No, the last one that I really liked was from 1999 or 2000. 2000 was Clayman. It was just such a distinct change in sound that it was, and just everything they were doing, their visual style, what they looked like on stage changed.
Wow.
Reroute to Remain.
Reroute to Remain. To remain what? We don't know. All right, so that brings us to towards the end of our show here, but we've got the big four that we need to talk about, which was just a difficult decision to make this week. And I think this is going to surprise both of us what we choose. Why don't you go ahead and go first and tell me what your big four intro opener songs are?
Okay, well, number 4, I had to pick I don't know if it's my favorite Megadeth song, but it's definitely one of my favorite Megadeth songs. And it's Holy Wars, Punishment Due. It's just such a brilliantly written song. Definitely one of the best from that era, the first 3-4 albums. I think it's probably one of the most mature songs that Dave wrote back then.
Yep, and that coincides. That's my number 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had that in there too. So your number 4 is Megadeth Holy Wars. So what's your number 3?
Number 3 is Painkiller by Judas Priest.
Well, that's mine. No, I actually left them off.
Oh.
That's my honorable mention, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
I had them on there. I think there's nothing that smacks you more in the face than that intro drum cover.
Oh yeah, the Scott Travis being on drums rather than the
Dave Holland.
Yeah,
we all
reliable Dave Holland.
The slow and steady.
It was not something I expected, and it's to this day my favorite Judas Priest album and my favorite Judas Priest song.
There you go.
Number 2, Aces High by Iron Maiden.
Ooh, number 2, huh?
Yeah, that was a tough one because there's so many good first songs by Iron Maiden. I could have probably filled the whole list with Iron Maiden songs. Same with Judas Priest. I mean, I could have picked Hell In and Electric Eye, Exciter, Free Will Burning. I love Free Will Burning.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Iron Maiden, I could have picked Caught Somewhere in Time. Where Eagles Dare, one of my favorites as well.
Mm-hmm.
Brave New World, even the new song, If Eternity Should Fail.
No, it was Wicker Man was the first song in the
Oh,
album.
yeah, sorry. Off of Brave New World.
Right, off Brave New World.
Wicker Man. But yeah, If Eternity Should Fail, fantastic song. But if I have to pick my favorite Iron Maiden opener, got to be Aces High.
All right, I like that. I mean, I was on my list. I definitely, it was between that and another song, so I'll add that on my list.
Number one.
So your number one, Big Four.
Overactive
intro.
Imagination by Death.
Wow.
It's
Wait, so Overactive, I heard that the other day.
It's from Individual Thought Patterns. Just absolutely love that song. There's a really cool guitar solo in there. Mm-hmm. You can hear the interaction between the bass and the guitar. They're doing different things, but it's all working together. It's just so brilliantly written, and it's my favorite Death album.
Awesome. Yeah, the more and more you keep talking about it, the more and more I keep listening to them. So that's a good thing. All right, my Big Four is a little different, and yet at the same time is some similarities. Okay, so honorable mention I mentioned was Judas Priest, Painkiller. Number 4 is Overkill's Coma off of the Horoscope album.
Okay,
and that song it's so cool because it builds up and is literally it's like it starts off with a slow little thing, and that Overkill's kind of been known for that in the later years. Slow little intro. Just kind of picking at the guitars. The drum comes in and does a little thing here and there, and they just slowly fade in and fade up, and then all of a sudden it's just blast and punch you in the face. That was probably the first of those to do that in 1991. That song still to this day kicks my ass. A ton of double bass on that. I love it. Love it. So that's my number 4. My number 3, Megadeth, Holy Wars. We just talked about that.
It's just such a killer song.
It is. I mean, the technical playing on that, and that was the classic Megadeth with Marty Friedman and Nick Menza and Junior and Dave.
It was the first with
yes,
Marty Friedman.
It was first with Marty Friedman, and that was just such a classic album. And just to start off the album that way, and it just continued. The whole album was straight through. It was just awesome.
Just kicks ass all the way through.
For sure. So number 2, and this is where I'm going to throw you, Ozzy Osbourne, I Don't Know. I love that song. Just that slow build, and then that guitar that Randy comes in. I mean, that's the first time that basically the world hears Randy Rhoads. Japanese people and some California people knew who Randy was, but basically
the world did.
The world now knows Randy Rhoads, and that intro riff is amazing. The song, some people criticize it. Some people say it's immature, it's not all this. To me, the riff kills it, and the song is just amazing to me from beginning to end. I like the lyrical content because you're talking about Ozzy being asked all these different questions, and his basic answer is throwing his hands up in the air saying I don't know.
Well, there's a lot to it that feels right after leaving Black Sabbath.
Exactly. And so it's a perfect statement. And I love this song. And to lead off an album like that, you get that big crash of the Chinese gong. It's just awesome. So that's my number 2. Number 1, you had difficulty. You could have chosen tons of different songs from Iron Maiden. I chose Where Eagles Dare.
Okay. It's fair. That's
right.
That's the other one I was going to pick.
And I chose Where Eagles Dare because as great as Aces High is as an intro song, and they've done it over several tours. They played Where Eagles Dare this tour, and I think they could have started with either one, but I think they had to start with Aces High because of what they did with the plane and everything.
Yeah, it was not just the first song on that album; it was the first song on the concert.
Right, exactly.
It's that heavy of a hitter.
When Where Eagles Dare came out, that was the first song that Nico played on the album, the first song that he had to play on the tour. He had to open every show with that song, with that single bass drum sound on the intro, that drumming place. He played with one bass drum.
Such a cool drum beat at the beginning.
Yes. And so he learned the song. It took him forever to learn the song. And then he said, what? Do what? That's the first song at a concert? What, are you crazy? That's why it's the song, because that was such a difficult part for him to learn. That's why it became my number 1 Big 4 intro song. Although, there's so many different songs from Maiden you could have picked.
Oh, yeah.
Except Gangland. No one's going to pick Gangland. Or is it
That wasn't the first one.
Invaders. I'm sorry, Invaders.
Invaders is still a cool song. It's not one they really play or ever.
Because it wasn't as strong an intro
It's
song.
It's probably the weakest song on that album, to be honest.
And Gangland.
Yeah, I mean,
I would have rather have heard Total Eclipse, which was put on later, than Gangland or Invaders. But I think what was cool about Invaders was that was the introduction to Bruce Dickinson. Here you go. Here's your intro to him. He's screaming. He's doing everything. He's showing why he's the air raid siren.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's still a good song. I like it. Right. It's just surprising to me that my favorite Iron Maiden album has probably the weakest intro of any of the Iron Maiden albums.
Yeah, exactly. So there were so many songs to choose from. I mean, it was between Judas Priest, having at least 5 or 6 songs you could pick from, Iron Maiden 5 or 6 songs you could pick from, Megadeth themselves. I mean, every band has. I didn't pick a Metallica song.
I was very surprised.
And that's why I said it was going to be surprising. Because you know what? As strong as Battery is, as strong as Blackened is, for whatever reason, those songs, I'm just so used to them that these other songs were so much more of a, if I hear them first song in a concert, I know this is going to be a good show.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And that was kind of what I was looking for, was there was other songs that to me have always been great intro songs, and they're so cool. But the qualifier for me was something that really just like smacked me into like, holy crap, this is awesome. I mean, just think of songs like I skipped on Neon Nights by Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. Such a cool song. It didn't hit me in the same way. Cowboys from Hell, Pantera, same thing. Such a cool song, such a great song. Just didn't hit me in the same way. Mm-hmm. And that's what I couldn't pick those.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So we're at that point of the show where we got to tell everybody where they can find us. So Chris, why don't you let them know where they can find us?
You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you consume your metal podcasts. If you enjoyed our show and agreed with our opinions, or just want to rip us a new one, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can email us at debatingmetal@gmail.com. That's it for us. I'm Chris Kaye, and on behalf of Kenneth Dean, we'll see you next week.